Grayson Wolfe never planned to walk into the quiet little cafe on the corner of 45th and Lexington that rainy evening. He had a driver, an umbrella, and a penthouse view far from street puddles and peeling sidewalks. But something, restlessness maybe, compelled him to dismiss his car and wander into the wet hum of the city. His million-dollar world of polished chrome and glass couldn't compete with the warmth that spilled from the cafe windows. He stepped in with his collar damp, the scent of roasted beans greeting him like an old friend. But it wasn't the coffee that held his gaze. It was her. Everly Rose Bennett stood behind the counter, her hair tied up in a messy bun, fingers stained with splashes of paint, and a quiet concentration on her face as she adjusted the tip jar with a doodled smiley face. She was nothing like the women from his world. No designer heels, no air of entitlement. Just raw authenticity wrapped in an oversized sweater and passion. When she looked up and met his eyes, something shifted. Grayson felt it deep in his chest, a jolt that had nothing to do with caffeine. He ordered black coffee. She served it with an apologetic grin, saying the foam art was a mess today. He didn't care. For the first time in years, he didn't think about mergers, stocks, or board meetings. He thought about her laugh, the twinkle in her eyes and the way her hands moved when she spoke about the street murals and dreams. He returned the next day, then the day after that, and soon it became a ritual. Rain or shine, Grayson showed up. Sometimes he read a book he never finished. Sometimes he just watched her work, speaking only when she did. He didn't tell her who he was. She called him the quiet guy with sad eyes, and for some reason, that made him smile. 2 weeks passed. They weren't dating. They weren't anything. But every word shared felt sacred. He learned that Everly painted at night and worked 2 jobs to save up for her own art studio. She learned nothing about him, really, except that he took his coffee bitter and stared at people like he was trying to memorize them. Still, something unspoken was building. Their hands would brush when she passed him change. Their eyes would meet and linger too long. Neither of them dared to name it, but it lived in the silences, in the space between words. Then came that Thursday night. The rain came down in sheets, blanketing the city in gray. Grayson stood across the street, watching her close up, her reflection in the glass, the way she tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. He memorized it all. He didn't know what he was waiting for. A sign? Courage? A moment to tell her she had undone him in just 14 days? Before he could second-guess himself, he crossed the street. Everly was locking the door when she noticed him. "Forgot your caffeine fix?" she teased, her voice soft against the storm. He stepped closer, his heart pounding louder than the rain. "No," he said. "Just forgot how to breathe when you're not around." She blinked, confused. Then he did something reckless, foolish, yet completely sincere. He kissed her. It wasn't practiced or smooth. It was soaked in rain and trembling with emotion. But it was real. She froze for a moment, then responded, her fingers curling into his coat as if anchoring herself. The city vanished. There was only the two of them, heartbeat to heartbeat beneath a humming streetlight. When he pulled back, he looked at her like she was a miracle. "Marry me," he whispered, the words falling out before he could stop them. Her eyes widened. "What?" she asked, breathless. "I don't want to wait," he said. "I don't want to pretend this is normal. I've never felt like this before. Let's not waste it." Everly laughed, part shock, part disbelief. "You're insane," she said, brushing wet hair from her face. "You don't even know me." "But I know what I feel," he replied, serious. "And I know I don't want to go another day without you in my life." She shook her head, trying to laugh it off. "You're serious." "I am." She didn't say yes. She didn't say no. But in her eyes, beneath the disbelief, there was a spark of hope, of wonder, of something beginning. She looked at him like he was a puzzle she hadn't expected but wanted to solve. And though she walked away that night without giving an answer, she kept looking back, like she wasn't sure if she should run from him or toward him. Everly didn't sleep that night. Her mind raced, replaying Grayson's kiss under the lamplight and his sudden proposal. She couldn't get it out of her head, the sweetness of it, the confusion, the rush. But beneath the electric feeling, something darker stirred. She knew something didn't add up. Grayson wasn't just a man who stumbled into her cafe by accident. There was something about him that didn't quite match the quiet, brooding image he projected. So, when she couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to him, she did what she thought would clear her mind. She Googled him. The screen of her phone lit up with search results that hit her like a physical blow. Grayson Wolfe, tech billionaire, founder of Wolfe Innovations. The articles kept coming, and with each one, her breath grew shallower. Forbes 30 under 30, New York's most eligible bachelor, tech mogul worth billions. She scrolled in shock, reading about the sleek, polished man that everyone else knew. The man who existed in a world far beyond her reach. The reality of it crashed down on her like a wave, cold and suffocating. He hadn't told her. Why? Why hadn't he mentioned any of it? He could have been honest, and yet he had kept it all from her. Her heart felt like it was breaking in two. Was she just some experiment to him? A test to see if the regular girl would fall for the man beneath the name? Her chest tightened as the truth twisted her insides. She wasn't naive. She knew the world she lived in, the world of late-night shifts and overdue rent. She wasn't supposed to be part of his world, and yet there they were, caught in the electric current of something that had felt, for a fleeting moment, real. Now it felt like a lie. Unable to sit with the crushing weight of it, Everly stormed into the cafe the next morning, hoping the flood of emotions would wash away when she saw him. But as soon as the bell over the door jingled, signaling Grayson's arrival, the nerves in her stomach tightened. She could already feel the pull of his gaze as he walked toward the counter, that confident stride of his, the way his eyes softened when they met hers. But she didn't return the smile. She couldn't. Instead, she stared at him, everything inside her a storm. "Can we talk?" His voice, gentle yet strained, cut through the silence. She nodded stiffly and led him toward the back room, feeling the weight of the moment settle between them. It was quieter back there, the hum of the cafe muted, and for a brief moment it felt like they were the only two people in the world. But the words she had been holding in all night tumbled out before she could stop them. "Why didn't you tell me who you were?" she asked, her voice more steady than she felt. Her chest was tight, her eyes stinging with frustration she hadn't known she was holding. She looked at him now, and for the first time, she saw the cracks beneath his perfect exterior. Grayson blinked, stunned. His mouth opened and closed as if trying to find the right words, but they seemed to escape him. He ran a hand through his hair, his blue eyes searching hers. "Everly, I wanted to tell you," he began softly, stepping closer, "but I didn't know how. I wanted you to see me, not the man behind the name. I wanted you to fall for me as I am, not because of what I can offer." The sincerity in his words cut through her anger like a knife, but it didn't erase the hurt. She stepped back, the sting of betrayal still sharp in her chest. "But you lied, Grayson," she said quietly, her voice almost breaking. "You kept it from me, and that's still a lie. How could you think I wouldn't find out? How could you think it wouldn't change everything?" He flinched, and for a moment, she saw the vulnerability in his eyes. Something raw, something human. "I never meant to hurt you. I didn't want to lose you before I had a chance to prove that it wasn't about my money or my name. It was always about us," he explained, his voice thick with regret. The words stung, but Everly couldn't let him in. Not yet. Not when everything she thought she knew about him had been built on false pretenses. She shook her head, backing away. "I need space, Grayson," she said, her tone final, even though her heart was screaming for him to stay. "I don't know if I can trust you anymore." Grayson's face fell, but he didn't argue. He had no choice but to accept her words, no matter how much they broke him. "Everly," he started, but she didn't want to hear it. She couldn't. She turned and walked out of the room, leaving him standing in the silence of the cafe, alone with the weight of his mistake. As the door swung closed behind her, Grayson's phone buzzed with an anonymous message, the words on the screen sending a chill down his spine. "Tell her the truth before I do." Grayson's hand trembled as he read the message. The photo attached was grainy, but unmistakable, his father in handcuffs, surrounded by scandal and whispers of betrayal. The kind of scandal that could shatter everything. The kind of scandal that could ruin his relationship with Everly forever. He had a choice to make, and it was a choice that would change everything. Confess his darkest secret to Everly, or risk losing her forever. The man who could navigate the most complicated business deals in the world suddenly felt powerless in the face of this one truth. And just like that, Grayson realized he had been lying to her for far too long. Now the question was, could he ever fix what was broken? Weeks dragged on, each one more painful than the last. Grayson couldn't seem to shake the image of Everly, her laughter, her warmth, her quiet strength. She had become an obsession he couldn't escape. He tried everything to reach her, sending flowers, leaving handwritten letters, even dropping by the cafe at odd hours. But each time, her rejection stung more than the last. She refused to see him, never picking up his calls, never answering his texts. Her absence was a void, a hole in his life that he couldn't fill, no matter how hard he tried. Grayson had never been the type of man to be left wanting, to feel the weight of his own mistakes. But that's exactly what he felt. With every unanswered gesture, every door that slammed in his face, he realized just how deeply he had hurt her. But he knew he had to make things right. He couldn't let her slip away without at least trying to show her the truth, the man he truly was. And so, he kept pushing forward, convinced that if he showed her enough, he could win back her trust, her heart. It wasn't until a rainy afternoon when his world collided with hers once again. Grayson was on his way to a meeting when he noticed Everly standing outside her building, her face pale, a piece of paper clutched tightly in her hands. He paused, his heart skipping a beat when he saw her. She hadn't changed, still the same beautiful, fiercely independent woman he had fallen for. But something was wrong. She looked like she had just received devastating news. "Everly," he called out, his voice tentative, uncertain whether she would even acknowledge him. Her gaze lifted, and for a moment, the coldness in her eyes made him step back. But then he saw it, the exhaustion, the pain that had replaced the fiery spirit he had once known. She was holding an eviction notice, and Grayson's chest tightened as he took in the words printed across the page. Her landlord was kicking her out of the apartment she had called home for years. The world around him blurred as he tried to process what this meant for her. She had no place to go. His mind raced with the knowledge that she had been battling her own demons, and yet she hadn't let him in. Without thinking, Grayson stepped forward, his voice thick with urgency. "I can help. You know I can help. I'll get you a new place. Whatever you need, just say the word." But Everly shook her head, a bitter laugh escaping her lips. "I don't want your help, Grayson. I don't need you to fix everything. I need you to stop hiding behind your money and be honest with me for once." Her words hit him like a slap, a sharp sting that forced him to take a step back. He opened his mouth, but she cut him off before he could speak. "You came into my life with all your wealth and secrets, and you never gave me a chance to know you, the real you. So stop with the grand gestures and the empty promises, Grayson. If you want to be here, if you want me, then show me who you really are." Her words were like daggers, each one piercing through the walls he had so carefully built around himself. He had been so focused on impressing her, on giving her the world, that he had completely forgotten what mattered most. Honesty. The truth was, he hadn't been honest with her, not about who he was, not about the struggles he had been hiding. And now as she stood before him, her face raw with emotion, Grayson knew that if he didn't open up, he would lose her forever. "Everly, he began, his voice faltering. "I should have told you everything from the beginning. The truth about my family, the scandal, the mess I've been trying to keep hidden from everyone, including you. I never wanted you to be a part of that, but I also didn't want to lose you." Grayson swallowed hard, his throat tightening as the weight of his confession settled in. He had spent so long bearing the truth, hoping that if he could just keep his past hidden, he could have a future with her. But that wasn't fair to her. Not anymore. "I didn't just fall for you because of your smile, or the way you make the world seem brighter. I fell in love with you the moment you handed me that awful cup of coffee." He chuckled bitterly, remembering that day, how everything had seemed to click, how she had been so real, so unpretentious, in a world full of facades. "I didn't want you to fall for the billionaire, or the man who could fix everything. I wanted you to fall for me, the man who can't stop thinking about you." Everly's eyes softened, but she didn't immediately say anything. Grayson's heart raced as he stepped closer, his knees hitting the ground before her. He didn't have a ring, didn't have the grand gesture he had originally imagined, but he had something far more important. The truth. The truth about his heart, about his feelings for her. "Say yes to me, Everly. Not the billionaire, not the man with all the answers, but the man who is completely and utterly in love with you." She didn't say yes, not right away, but she didn't walk away either. Instead, she stood there, her breath shaky, her hands trembling as she wiped away the tears that had begun to fall. "I don't know if I can trust you again," she whispered, the words breaking her heart as much as they broke his. "But I can't deny what I feel either." And in that moment, Grayson knew that he had made progress, not by offering her everything he had, but by finally giving her the one thing she had always wanted: honesty. The road ahead was uncertain, but as Everly looked down at him, not with anger, but with something softer, something more vulnerable, he held on to hope. The chance to earn her love wasn't gone. Not yet. Not if he could find a way to prove that he was more than just the man she had once thought him to be. The photograph caught her eye the moment she entered Grayson's study. It was old, its edges curled and faded, but the faces were clear enough to stir something deep within her. It was Grayson, standing beside a woman who looked familiar in some intangible way. Her hair was dark, her smile soft, and her hand rested gently on her stomach, a rounded belly that left no question about her condition. The woman was pregnant. Grayson's expression, though, was one of such tender affection that it stopped Everly in her tracks. There was a softness there, a warmth that was unlike anything she had ever seen in him. It left her breathless, and for a moment, she couldn't understand why she felt a surge of panic rising in her chest. She hadn't even realized she was holding her breath until the air finally rushed in, sharp and heavy. Her heart pounded as she stared at the photo, unable to tear her gaze away. Who was this woman? Why had Grayson never mentioned her? A surge of emotions coursed through her. Confusion, jealousy, a deep, unsettling feeling she couldn't place. She needed answers, and she needed them now. She turned quickly and rushed out of the study, the photo still vivid in her mind. Grayson was sitting at the kitchen counter, his back to her, scribbling in a notebook. His posture was relaxed, but something about his presence felt off, almost too calm. He didn't hear her approach, and it only heightened her nerves. "Grayson," she said, her voice barely a whisper, a tremor in her words. He turned toward her, but as his eyes met hers, he could instantly sense that something was wrong. His brow furrowed in concern. "What's wrong?" he asked, standing up slowly. But Everly wasn't listening. The image of the woman in the photograph flashed before her eyes again, and without thinking, she blurted it out. "Who is she?" The question hung heavy in the air. Grayson's expression changed instantly. His eyes hardened, his jaw clenched. Everly's heart ached at the sight. The vulnerability she had seen in him before, the one that made her want to reach out to him, was now buried beneath layers of something much darker. His gaze faltered, and for a long moment, he didn't answer. "Grayson, please," she said again, her voice cracking. "I need to know. Who was she?" The silence stretched between them, thick and suffocating, before Grayson finally exhaled deeply, as though releasing the breath he had been holding for years. "She was Lila," he said softly, his voice barely above a whisper. The name seemed to hang in the air, as if it carried more weight than just a simple word. Everly's heart pounded harder. She stepped forward, the words rushing out of her before she could stop them. "Was?" she asked, her chest tightening with dread. He swallowed hard, his eyes brimming with unshed tears, and the raw emotion in his gaze tore at her. It was like watching someone who had been through a storm and was still trying to stand strong, even as the winds threatened to knock them down again. "She was my fiancée," Grayson said, his voice shaking slightly. "She died in a car crash, and so did the baby." Everly's world seemed to tilt, the ground beneath her suddenly unsure. The air felt thicker, heavier, as though the room itself was suffocating her. She took a step back, trying to process the gravity of his words. She had known he carried burdens, but she hadn't realized the extent of them. She hadn't known about Lila, hadn't understood that the man she had come to care for, the man she had thought to be whole, had once loved someone else so completely, so deeply. For a moment, everything around her blurred. She could feel her heart breaking, not just for the woman Grayson had lost, but for the grief that still haunted him. Grief that had been buried deep inside, locked away for far too long. She had seen his intensity, his drive, his need for control, and now it all made sense. It wasn't just about his wealth or his success, it was about loss. A loss so deep that it had scarred him in ways he had never shared. The vulnerability in his eyes, the way he had looked at her, suddenly took on a new meaning. This wasn't just the billionaire trying to win her over. This was a man who had been shattered by tragedy, who had been carrying the weight of his past all alone, too afraid to let anyone in. Everly's emotions swirled like a storm inside her chest. She had never imagined that Grayson had been through something like this. She had only seen the polished exterior, the perfect image of a man who had it all together. But now she saw him, really saw him for the first time. She saw the broken pieces he had tried to keep hidden, the scars that no amount of money could erase. She could feel her anger fading, replaced by a deep empathy for him. She understood now. His desperation to hold on to her wasn't about needing her, at least not in the way she had thought. It was about the need to heal, the need to finally let someone in after years of loneliness. The tears she had been holding back finally fell, not for herself, but for him, for Lila, for the child that could have been, and for the man who had been carrying this burden all alone. She stepped forward, her body trembling as she reached out to him, not with questions, but with comfort. This was the moment she had been waiting for, where all the walls came down, and all that was left was raw honesty. Grayson looked at her, his eyes wide with shock. He hadn't expected this. He had braced himself for rejection, for anger, but instead she reached for him, her hands trembling as they found his. She didn't speak, but she didn't need to. In that moment, it was clear. She wasn't walking away. She wasn't going to let him face this alone. For the first time, he allowed himself to lean into her embrace, the weight of years of grief pressing down on him. And for the first time in a long while, Grayson Wolfe felt something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. Grayson stood frozen at the entrance of the gala, his mind racing as he watched Everly slip away into the darkness. The laughter and music of the event seemed to fade into oblivion as the weight of Vanessa's words and Everly's absence crushed him. For a moment, everything felt surreal, like the beautiful woman who had captured his heart was slipping through his fingers, forever lost to the glamorous world he never wanted her to be a part of. Grayson had always been in control of everything, but now in the chaos of his emotions, he realized he had never been in control of her heart. Everly had come to the gala with him, dressed to perfection, full of life and love for a man who had tried so hard to shield her from his world. Yet it had only taken a few words from Vanessa, a few images, to tear it all apart. Frustration and anger bubbled up inside Grayson. He should have known. Vanessa had never liked Everly, always seeing her as a threat to her own ambitions. But he hadn't expected her to stoop so low, to use their shared history to manipulate the one person Grayson had hoped would stay by his side. Vanessa's betrayal stung deeper than he cared to admit. He should have never let her into his world again. And now he was paying the price for it. He glanced around the gala, the laughter and clinking of glasses, a stark contrast to the turmoil inside him. Grayson had been a man of wealth and influence, but none of it mattered now. None of it could fix the broken pieces of his relationship with Everly. He had tried to be honest with her, to share the parts of his soul that others couldn't touch. But it seemed like no matter how hard he tried, the shadow of his past always loomed over them. Determined not to lose her, he sprinted out of the venue, searching the streets, calling her name into the empty night. It felt like a cruel twist of fate. Just when he thought things were getting better, the truth he had so carefully hidden was tearing them apart. He didn't know where she had gone, but he couldn't afford to let her slip away. Not after everything they had shared. After what seemed like an eternity of searching, he finally spotted her, sitting alone on a park bench. the dim streetlights casting long shadows over her tear-streaked face. She looked so fragile, so distant. He approached cautiously, the guilt of everything weighing on his chest like an anchor. "Everly," he whispered, his voice trembling with emotion. "Please, just talk to me." She didn't look up. Her eyes were fixed on the pavement, the words Vanessa had planted in her mind, growing louder with every passing second. The pain of betrayal was evident in her posture. Her shoulders hunched, her body curled in on itself, as if trying to protect herself from the storm brewing inside. "You don't understand," she said softly, her voice broken. "I can't compete with your world, Grayson. I'm just someone who doesn't belong here. Not with you. Not with this life." Grayson's heart shattered at her words. Every fear he'd had about the gulf between their worlds had suddenly been realized, but he couldn't accept it. He wouldn't let her walk away without fighting for them. "You're wrong," he replied urgently, kneeling in front of her. "You belong with me. Don't listen to her, Everly. She's just trying to tear us apart. I don't care about the world I live in. I care about you. You, Everly, the woman who makes me feel whole. This life, this money, it doesn't matter without you." Everly shook her head, the tears continuing to fall. "But I'm not like them, Grayson. I'm not like the women you've been with, the women who belong in your world. I don't know how to fit in with all of this." Grayson reached for her hands, his touch gentle but insistent. "You don't have to fit in, Everly. I don't need you to be someone you're not. I just need you to be with me, to trust me." She met his gaze, and for a brief moment, the walls she'd built around her heart seemed to soften. But then, as quickly as it had come, the hesitation faded, replaced by the heavy weight of doubt. "I don't know if I can do this anymore, Grayson. I thought we could be different. I thought you weren't like all the others. But I was wrong." Grayson's breath caught in his throat. His heart pounded in his chest as he fought to keep the tears at bay. He had never felt more vulnerable, more desperate. He had to make her see, had to make her believe that they could have something real, something that transcended everything else. "I've never wanted anything more in my life than I want you, Everly," he said, his voice shaking. "Please don't let her poison what we have, what we could have." Everly's eyes flickered with something, pain, confusion, maybe even a flicker of hope. But it wasn't enough. Slowly she stood up, wiping away her tears. "I don't know if I can believe in this anymore, Grayson. I'm sorry." Without another word, she turned and walked away, leaving Grayson standing in the darkness, alone once again. The words, the heartache, the broken trust echoed in his mind as he watched her disappear into the night. Grayson spent 2 long weeks in a haze of regret, searching for Everly with an urgency he hadn't felt for anything or anyone before. He reached out to friends, checked every gallery she could have visited, and wandered the same streets they had walked together, haunted by the memories of her smile and the warmth of her touch. It wasn't just about finding her. He needed to fix what he had broken, to make her believe in him again. That evening, his search led him to Central Park, and there, against the backdrop of a quiet sky, he saw her. She was sitting alone on a bench, her eyes focused on the canvas before her, paintbrush in hand, as if the world around her didn't exist. She looked fragile, distant, almost like she had become part of the scenery, a quiet figure lost in her own thoughts, while the world moved on. Grayson's heart clenched at the sight. Without saying a word, he moved toward her, and without hesitation, draped his coat over her shoulders. The gesture wasn't grand or desperate, but it was everything he could offer in that moment. Everly didn't look up right away. She didn't need to. The silence between them was as comforting as it was painful. They sat together like that for what felt like hours, the world around them fading until the sky darkened and the stars began to emerge, twinkling quietly above them. Finally, Grayson broke the silence in a voice full of raw emotion. "I'd trade every dollar, every company, every title for just one more night with you." His words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Everly's eyes finally met his, her gaze filled with a mixture of uncertainty and longing, a softness that he had missed so terribly. She blinked, her lips trembling as she whispered, "Why me?" The question was simple, yet it cut through him like a knife. He took a deep breath, his heart racing. "Because when I kissed you, the world stopped. and for the first time, I felt alive. His words were the truth he had never dared to say before. Everly's eyes shimmered with unshed tears, but she said nothing. She didn't need to. Her eyes told him everything. The next hours were filled with the sound of soft laughter, quiet conversations, and moments of vulnerability they hadn't shared before. They didn't need grand gestures or words to fill the gaps between them. They simply existed together in the peaceful silence of the night, their hands brushing now and then, sending sparks of warmth through their fingertips. As the night deepened, they lay side by side on the grass, their heads resting on the same pillow of soft earth. There were no promises, no expectations, only the feeling of being together in that moment, under the vastness of the sky. It wasn't lust. It wasn't about the passion they'd once shared. It was something far more fragile and tender, love in its most raw and beautiful form. Grayson reached for her hand, intertwining their fingers, and for the first time in weeks, he felt at peace. This night, this fleeting moment, was everything he had been searching for. The world might have been a chaotic mess, but in that moment, with Everly by his side, everything felt right. The sun rose over Manhattan, casting golden light across the steel towers, but Grayson's world only centered around one thing: Everly. That morning he entered his boardroom with fire in his veins. Cameras rolled, reporters murmured, but he spoke with clarity. He announced his departure from several corporate ventures, denounced Vanessa's deceit, and silenced every whisper of scandal. "I've built empires," he said, voice steady, "but the truest thing I've ever built was a moment beneath the stars with her." The crowd fell silent. The news flooded every screen across the city, and in her tiny studio, paintbrush in hand, Everly sobbed quietly. She had always feared being too small for his world, but he just made it fit around her. That evening, hands trembling, she stood before the penthouse door that once felt like a palace gate. When he opened it, he looked stunned, hope flickering in his ocean blue eyes. "I never gave you an answer," she whispered, rain clinging to her lashes. "But if you ask me again, this time," her voice faltered, then steadied, "I'll say yes." Grayson dropped to one knee. No ring, just reverence. "Everly Rose Bennett, will you be my always?" She didn't hesitate. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." He pulled her into his arms, tears catching between their lips. The world melted beyond those walls. In that moment, nothing else existed. Only two souls that finally chose each other. No doubts, no masks, just love. A love not found in fairy tales, but forged in heartbreak, honesty, and healing. A love worth fighting for.